I'm going to take some of this blue up in this sponge because I want to show you a couple other things. Plus I want to get rid of that blue on my palette. So this is a natural sponge, and I have put it in the water. It's moist. But this also will give you a nice pattern. Just like and some of these areas are going to look pretty odd to you at different times. It eventually all will come together. Oop. Now, as you see down here, everything is actually pretty dark. So right now, this is all bright, but I can either come in this way, just tone the whole area, or I can just let it build up as I go. Different approaches, different paintings. The world is your oyster. I find what I have to do is if I kind of see myself going on one track, but I think, oh, I need to paint that again, or I need to change it, I will start with the piece I've already worked on. And I'm trying to get more in the habit of just starting a new piece, because once you start to repaint, at least for me, it becomes a totally different painting by the time I'm done. I still have the blue up here. I'm just going to come up in here and dot a few more sky holes. All very fine, very. But the more texture that you can build up, the more the leaves will leave. So you have different ways of creating that texture. You can use something like this, a sponge, or you can use your fan brush, or you can use that chip brush. There's a lot of different methods. I am going to now just take I'm going to take one of these. All right, so this is another one of the Chinese brush. The whole pack, I think, was under $15. There were 3 or 5 brushes in here. I've given away 3 of them, apparently. I have 2. So actually, that is one thing about if you do use your sponge directly, you might want to put gloves on. I did stain my hands, but that's not new. All right, I'm going to come in here I need something very warm. Just going to assess it. Okay, I am going to give myself a nice warm purple. All right, I'm going to come here, and I'm going to come right there. I'm going to give you a lot of that blue. In fact, too much blue. I don't usually paint with my watercolors that thick. Not supposed to do that. Oh, also, if you noticed, when you do spray, if like that sprays pretty hard, you can push and spatter everywhere else. So I do have other spray bottles that are a little bit more direct, and I don't get so much overflow. But if I start with this blue, instead of rinsing my brush off, I'm just going to come in here and use some of that strong pigment. Let's get my tree going here. Now, one thing, if you are doing trees or even architecture, you think that, I have to use a ruler. I need those straight lines. If you find that your piece looks very, very, just tight and stiff, try trusting your hand and just paint that straight line. That's why it's easy if you like start at the top and just kind of come down. And don't worry if your hand goes off a little bit this way or that way. See, now that is the side of the brush here. I'm just flipping that up. I'm not concerned so much with what color I'm using as right now I'm building up the darkness and changing the value of my painting. Okay. So I started to say I was going to put in those shadows. I'm going to take the color that's most like the magenta, which is this, the quinacridone magenta. All right. Now, this brush, what I like about it, it picks up a lot of pigment, but you can also get this nice brush stroke out of it. These are the things you're going to figure out with using your materials more. And these are gifts. These are fun things to have in the painting. They add texture. So don't always think that you have to totally fill in things. See how now that purple's reading real nicely just between those trees. Just add a little color here and there. Now I want to show you, see there again, I'm doing the scrubby brush out. I just want to show you for demonstration purposes, because this brush is it is considered a round, it's pointy, but let's take one of the rounds that you might have in your kit. I've got two here. This is the Robert Simmons TT85 round, and that's a number 12, this gray one. And this is considered a number 14. I don't usually use this type of brush. I prefer to use something like this. It's just, I find these, they're good for certain things. Now, I just put that brush directly in my paint. Normally, I do not do that. When I start with a new brush, I dip it in water. So I'm just, showtime. See, I can still get that same roughness. It's how I'm using the brush. And if you have a lot of pigment on there, like if I really just sloop this up, now if I come in here, I can make that. I can just fill in everything. But what I like to do is leave those little air holes and things and let the next layer fill things in. Play around with that type of thing and just see what you get. You don't have to go paint a masterpiece every time you're out of the gate. Just have fun with it and experiment. There's a lot of things within your household that you can use to enhance and add even more interest to a watercolor. If you've heard about adding salt to a very wet area, and that will crystallize and kind of turn add a little bit more pigment and structure. Now, do you see what I'm doing? Okay, I'm coming back to this is why a good point is favored by we can come in here and make these brush strokes. This brush is holding a lot of pigment for me, and it lets me take some of these tree trunks and develop them a little bit more, because I've got the moisture on this brush, plus I've already got the pigment on my paper, but I'm kind of re-wetting it in time. See my purple coming out there? Now, also when we look here, the violet, purple, is across from your yellow. So if you notice, I'm putting the complementary next to the complementary of the purple next to the yellow. You get a little bit more vibration that way too. This tree has a little bit more character this time. So if I want to come down here, I can still bring out a few things. And I know you're like starting to go, well, that doesn't look a thing like that. Well, we're not there yet. So do you see how I'm actually kind of, I don't know, doodling more than I call this, I think my style is doodle, I had it figured out. Okay. I want to just show you kind of what I'm doing here. Do you see how I'm moving up a little bit? I'm closing in. And I'm softening some of these lines. I'm just coming right over here, softening that, because I'm using the moisture off of this brush that has the pigment. So I can start to see, like here, the little base of the tree. Give me a little bit more there. I like to let the colors run down and mix as they go down. So one of the things that you might find if you're looking at your little wood scene and you're like, it's so stagnant. Try mushing it around or messing it up a little bit, because the woods is messy. There's twigs and things going each and every way. So it's when you make that perfect little tree or something like that, and you're like, oh, it just doesn't look a thing like what I remember. It's more the way the light hit the tree. So that's kind of what we're trying to do. Because when I took that picture, we were actually, my sister had taken her horses to a friend's, the property that I worked at. And we started going on their trails. And it was just one of those, you came into a clearing and boom, you got this little light show. So the original picture that this was painted from is like on one of those, probably a 110 Insta camera, nothing fancy. But I use those pictures as memories, and I also use them as the reference for the shapes. They don't have to have good color. You know how things fade over the years. So it doesn't have to have that perfect color for you to work from it if it's an old photograph or a favorite photograph. And what I like about painting in general is just you have the ability of kind of like taking yourself out of yourself and also putting yourself back into maybe a favorite place that you used to go, or some place that just reminds you of a special time, a calming place to be. Now this pigment, or this paint set, I'm going to keep using that big one. This purple from them, it's a mineral purple, so it's a nice strong. I'm going to add a little bit more of the blue, bring it to a little bit more. Now another way to do your mixing, so I've got a little bit of this purple right there, I've got that blue there. I can come in here and bring in this, which is the good mix. And then I've actually got little dabs of paint all over that I can pull from. Here's that same blue right there. But I do tend to keep things pretty light. Right now I'm not going to thin that out as much as I might, because we are coming into some of these darker areas, and let's get some of that filled in. Now the purple I'm looking at right now, it's a little bit colder than I might want it to be, and I'm going to warm that up. But the more you get to know the colors that you have on your palette, the more you'll have the ability to just play. Like, see, if I look at that cobalt teal, I'm just going to grab a little bit of that. Pop that in. And see, I mean, it's not really just showing anything. It's just the color looks nice there. Hey. And as I'm coming into some of these other areas, I'm reactivating, because I've got the moisture of the brush. So I'm reactivating that, and I can mix it with what is on there. I'm going to put this down. One of the brushes that I will use is not here. When I'm working in with the trees, I like a nice liner brush. And I'm going to pull out the cheap ones. I should say inexpensive. All right, so I have these liner brushes, which are long and slender. This is called a dagger, and I think there's another name for it, but this one is considered a dagger. And that sword shape is very nice. It has a nice tip. So if you want to do, like right now, what I'm going to show you is I'm going to come back in, I'm going to grab some of this raw sienna, which is right up here. In the background here, with the trees, I like the fact that I'm kind of seeing some of that glowing in there. So I'm going to add a little bit more trunk for that. This all looks kind of very hard right now, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my spritzer bottle and I'll soften it. These lines, you're like going, oh my gosh, those are horrible. I'm going to soften them. Watercolors all work differently. Some people will not add water beyond the beginning, or they totally soak the paper. I do at times, But if you see where I had those fine lines, now that water has kind of softened things, and I can, if I want to pull up something, make it more pronounced or reduced. I can do that just by moving the pigment that's on the paper already. And when you think about the woods, the branches are going in all different directions. So that's why you'll see me take brushes like something like this. And let's come in here a little bit deeper. All right, I'm grabbing this burnt orange here. I'm going to come in and bring. Okay. I am going to grab some of this chrome yellow. Okay, again, that's a warmer. That's right there. I'm going to come in here. I'm using that bouncing pattern again because I'm thinking of the field. I'm thinking of the grasses. Thinking of different directions. So use your brush like maybe in unexpected ways, things that you, like if you were adding makeup and you were adding a shadow, doing the same thing. You're just kind of softening with the way you're using your brush. See, and how even just that zigzaggy starts to give it a field like, oh, you know, can start to see it as part of a field. All right. I'm going to get a little bit more green into those trees. And I'm going to start over here with our warm olive green. And I'm just going to stick it in there. All right, so now I'm using stronger, the pigment more concentrated. So I'm bringing a darker value into my painting. I'm still skipping around because I don't want to cover up everything that I just did. So those other unexpected colors, see how this even the tree, that's kind of cool how right now it starts with that cooler blue and it drops into more that tealy, turquoisey, and then now it's starting to meld with the greens. So this is what I think is one of the nicer or the exciting things about working with watercolor. I enjoy all kinds of mediums for all different reasons. So now I can kind of pull in just, here's some grass, here we go. I can go down, I can go up. But these Little fan brushes are really quite handy for this type of painting. Now, same thing up here. I'm in the woods. I'm going to really squint, and then I can start building more, just more branches. Try to make more sense of what's going on. Some of these things you won't necessarily discover until you're painting it. Okay, I just brought over these two greens. Now, I think I was calling that Viridian. This set calls this this green, the bluer green, a phthalo green. Phthalos are usually very staining. They're in the blue range. Viridian would be another name for that. In another set, the different manufacturers, and then they make up their own names too. So sometimes you're lost without a color chart to figure out, well, what is that color? It might be a name that makes sense to them, but you're not quite sure. Does that mean that it's like a alizarin crimson or what? So see now this nice warm green, I'm just kind of schmoozing it around. And yeah, you know the painters, like mailbox, I can't even think of it. Toll painting was a big thing back in the not 50s, but the 70s, 80s. I don't know when that was so popular. But a lot of times what you'll see is they double load the brush. They'll put like the cool color on one side and the warm on the other. And then you're kind of working that all in there from the get-go. All right, still trying to figure out what I'm doing here. You don't necessarily have to know where you're going. You might end up with a big mess, but you might end up with something that is workable and a nice surprise. And the more you do it, if you don't like that painting, then paint another one. If you do love the painting that you did, then paint another one. Because that's the only way that you're going to continue to grow. And because that's the one thing another thing I just like about the creatives in general, is the only shutdown is you. You know, if you focus yourself on your creatives as often as much you can, often and as much as you can, you probably will be a happier person in general. Okay, so this is the other thing that I get a kick out of, that when I paint this way, I love the fact that I end up with all these little rainbows in my paintings, because like right now, I'm just getting a lot of nice colors that are just mixing, because they are. And they're happy accidents, kind of. But see, when I'm putting this pigment on right now, I'm going to come back over here just to show you that, see, I've got a little pigment on here. It's not super, this is a darker, thicker, but I'm just loading up that brush. So when I come over here, that initial attack is, boom, nice and dark. Now I have to watch where these bases of these trees are going, because they can be pretty boring if I put them all at the same starting point. Now see how that, just using this brush on the side, how it's creating all that texture. Okay. All right, so this time I'm just doing a little bit of the ultramarine blue. I keep thinking I'm doing ditches, so I'm you're just doing, I'm building up one of the edges. We'll see. All right, these all look like, what the heck? It's so hard and I'm going to show you what we can do for that too. Now, another thing, as you're painting, okay, I picked up a string or something on here. All right. Watercolor, you might see an area that you think, oh, that's so beautiful, look at it, and it just blending together, like when I was like, oh, it's so great over here. Now, ever since I said that to you, it's continued to soften, and so sometimes it melts. What you saw there at one point, you're like, where did it go? But you can always come back and just strengthen it. If you saw it before, and just pull those colors back in, bring them in with a little bit stronger value. I'm going to show you a little bit here because you're probably going, that looks horrible. Okay, I'm going to take this, my chip brush again. I'm going to come in with a little bit of the Azo yellow. This is one of those warmer yellows. So what I'm doing right now is I'm bringing that warmer yellow in over that purple. It's going to calm it down a little bit. I actually want closer to the trees to be the brighter end. If you see, right now this value is getting really close to that value too. And what's going to happen is that value is going to be stronger there, and then it fades out. But I'm going to show you what we're going to do about that. All those sharp, sharp lines, I can just knock them down with a little bit of water. Watercolor is always soluble unless you fix it with some type of anything. You can come back to this painting in 20 years, and you could sit down with your brush and continue on. Okay, I'm starting to show you kind of my little scrubbing. If you've already painted some area and you're like, ah, that's too dark, much darker than I had wanted. I wanted it lighter. I wanted something else. So I'm just going to pull that pigment down. And okay, where I have two brushes that, not two, but more. This flat used to look like this flat. Let's show them under here. See how the bristles are all kind of flared out on the edges of these? This is a nice flat. This one used to look like that. But what I tend to do, and a lot of artists will, well, not everybody. Some watercolor are like, oh no, once it's down, I don't touch it again. If I want to pick up some of this pigment and make things look lighter, all I have to do is come in here. I'm just going to add more water, because that water is going to soften all that. I can come in with a paper towel. I can blot. I can also take this brush, and I'm picking up the pigment. And see how I can soften all those edges? It starts to make a little bit more sense. So don't forget, every painting, it's just like us. You have your teenage period, they call it the ugly teenager period, but I don't think teenagers are ugly. We're all just learning at whatever pace. But see now how some of these lines kind of create a little bit more of an interest of, you know, what's creating all those shadows. And so some of those lines that you originally may have thought, oh my gosh, what's going on? This area right now is still like a cacophony of, oh my goodness, what's going on? Sometimes when you come back, I just have water on this brush right now. If you come back and just add a little water, soften things down. I'm just softening those edges, letting the pigment flow. I'm going to take my little spritzer bottle here. See all these areas? They kind of look they're not as peaceful as I would like them to be. I want peaceful trees. So see how nicely I can soften some of these areas. But I don't want to just soften the whole thing. I want to just kind of hit different areas. Some of these lines, did they get too fat? Maybe. Can I do anything about it? Maybe. One can only try. I always figure if it's already broken, why not? Just try. You could always get another piece of paper. They say if you paint a masterpiece, don't sit back and just enjoy it. Go paint another one. But painting takes time. And that's the hardest thing, unless you have the gift of just being able to dedicate all that time to your arts. Sometimes it's pretty bad trying to find time to do these things. So I'm following this tree. if I see the paint going into, there was like kind of a line like that. It was pushing it that way. If I want to soften that or push it the other way, I can just, but see what I'm doing is very automatic with pulling. I'm just using water right now. I'm using the pigment on the paper. Now, another thing that you will find is different pigments. Some will lift and some will not. And that is something that is another reason that it's good to do a color chart and kind of experiment with that in there, because I can come back to this color chart and I'll come over to this. See, if I want to check to see how well does this color lift, I can come back here, put a little water right there, wherever I want. Just kind of scrub it. So that's what I'm actually doing up there when I'm softening those edges. I'm just kind of scrubbing this down, and I'm picking up that pigment. See, because I can reintroduce a little bit of a lighter spot. I'll never get it back to the white in a paper like this. It's absorbent. There are papers that, or different products. If you were doing something on a paper called Yupo, you can pull that right back down to the white, but that is a totally different paper because it's synthetic. So your results are quite different too. Okay. I think I'm going to take a little break, and then we'll pick this up and we'll let this sit up for a minute, and I can take a look at it and see where we're going to go from it. But here is the beginning of our forest. All right, so let's continue. I want to bring in more darks and make it more dramatic, because what happens when you increase that contrast between your lightest light and your darkest dark, that is going to be what brings that person to your artwork. I'm going to soften some of these areas in behind. Especially when you're in the woods, there's a lot of that other. So right now what I'm doing is I'm just taking my water and I'm moving things around. And I'm actually going to switch to that heavier round brush because it is a little bit firmer and it allows me to push that paint a little bit more. See, I normally don't have a tray of paint in my hand, but I always have a rag, and that is how I control my water. See, now when you see a drip like that, you have two reactions. You could freak out and go, oh, it ruined all my, or you just kind of flick it away. And that's usually what I do, because I can bring it into all these branches. Now, some of these areas here, I'm going to be bringing in more darks, but I also don't want to cover up a lot of the nice color effects that I do have going on in there. Actually going to come back to that chip brush. Just going to pick up, kind of pouncing even on my board there. I'm going to pounce. Bringing in more trees. I'm building up my layers. soften some of this light. See right there where that purple line is really kind of just hard. I mean, I might bring that back out later with a darker, but I can also come back in. So what you see me doing is I have the brush. It's just got clean water on it. So you saw how that tree was getting really fat, but I can reduce. And I can soften some of these areas. So some of the things that might be looking a little too jarring to you, you can change. You always want to be able to step back and look at your painting from a distance of some sort so you can see where are you going, what's going on here. Now up here, well, at the bottom of my painting, it's very noisy. It's just got a lot of stuff going on, and if I leave that all like that, you're going to kind of get stuck there. I'm going to bring down some of that. Here's a lot of little drippy things, and that's just because if I were working on a table or a lower angle, I might not have as many of those, but I don't find them to be unworkable. They're just a little pot of a little bit of that color that pooled together. You can always pick that up, take it somewhere else. But when I'm working at home, there's a lot of times where I am doing the majority of a painting just with a fan or a few fan brushes. See, I can come back in here and relighten some of these areas. I'm softening areas and I'm kind of pulling them together so they don't read so disjointed. Come back up into the sky. I'm just going to knock out. Now that brush was still a little, well, my water's getting a little dirty there. I may have tipped into the wrong bin. But by adding even just that kind of yellowed, you're kind of giving that cloud a little bit more definition. Think of the way the sun hits on those. So I'm picking this up with, a lot of times I use just a flannel piece of fabric. A lot of artists will use paper towel. I do use so much water, I prefer a piece of fabric because the paper towel will get pretty wet on me pretty quick. And it's pretty much just what I started with, was using a rag over a paper towel because that's what I use for the other mediums too. All right, now we need to kind of calm all of those areas down. And I wanted to get more green in here, so I'm going to come back. Oh, that's another thing I want to show you. When your set has a black, which in this set we have, this is the neutral, which as you can see how it's got quite a gray to it. See how I have green in that? Well, it's because I pulled some of this yellow over there. I can use any of my yellows because blacks tend to be basically a dark blue. So I could pick up some of that pigment, come over here, and it's going to give me some form of green. Once you know that on your, with the colors that you're working with, it opens up a few more doors. So see, I can mix that green. I've also got, I'm going to come over here and grab some of this green gold. It doesn't look like much right there, but if you, it has a nice golden color to it. So now I'm laying that color over its complement because it's a yellow, and I'm putting it over a purple. It has such when you do pick up a color, if you use it in one spot of your painting, make sure you bring it in somewhere else also. A lot of people, everybody teaches differently, everybody learns differently. I just, you just keep, if you're not getting the results you're hoping for, maybe you need to just continue listening to other people. You just have to practice, and someday you will figure yourself out, and you'll maybe have better results, depending on what you're going for. If you want to paint really realistically, you need to be drawing every day. Work in black and white, you don't need much more than a pencil. The more you work, your skills are always improving, and your vision is improving, and you're training your eyes. See, now, when I first came out of college, and the job I had, I spent a lot of my time, because I was the one that could custom match whatever they needed. Same thing, this is where that color chart comes in very handy, because I just need to know what's in my kitchen. I need to know what I'm cooking with, what are my options, and that's why I like to keep that color chart up there, because I can see what's going to match with what. Okay, right now I'm adding a little bit bluer. I'm adding some of that purple up into our sky. I'm strengthening that. Again, the fact that I'm kind of bringing it in that extra layer there on that white just starts to make the top of that cloud pop. So see how Sometimes it's just a little wisp. Some people like to keep their skies very, very neutral so they don't conflict or talk louder than the other part of the painting that they might want you to see. I go both ways. Sometimes I keep it a very plain sky, and sometimes I like to have some dramatic. When I first started painting, I used to love to sit there and try to do the storm clouds. Those colors are just, you know, how do you mix that? How do you mix that? So let me just see. We might be able to just pull this right together real quick. I am going to take just that purple, which is right here. This purple might be called a mineral purple in your kit, or it could be dioxazine, if I'm saying that correctly. Probably not. And there again, with this brush, the way it kind of splays, I can create more little branches. And I can create a big mess. Oh, and that's another thing too. You can flick things away with your finger. Soften. And you always have that brush with a little water. Now, not everybody has this style where they scrub. So don't think that's the only way to work. Other people will be horrified, oh my gosh. But I don't recommend you scrubbing away with your really expensive brushes. Well, you can. I have a $30 brush that I will show you. This, and where's its sister? Here's its replacement brush. This brush used to look like this, but I did that back pushing and scrubbing with this, and so it's worn down to that. It's one of my favorite brushes though, because I still reach for it over the replacement any day. You get to know your tools. Now out here, we're kind of fading into our foreground. I'm just gonna kind of fill these in and just see. So now I'm kind of cleaning my tray. When I paint in oil or acrylic, if I have a little leftover paint at the end of the day, instead of just letting that paint go bad or stiffen up, a lot of times will do what I call a palette cleaner. And I love those because I'm very loose with those. And you want to let yourself experiment and just kind of play with things. And not everything has to be a masterpiece. Some can be just experimental, or they're all learning. Every painting that you work with, you learn something. So I'm going to quiet some of this down. See, right now I have kind of like a green on there, but when I look at it, I see the colors that dance on on the grasses. So you get the general idea. I think I've shown you enough that shown you how you can soften areas with the just introducing a little bit more water. Again, I'm this brush now, it doesn't have a lot of water on it. I'm just kind of picking up the pigments that I have left here. People are afraid of making mud. I hear that all the time, but if you look in the colors here, they're all colors that should be making mud, but I'm not scrubbing them together enough to do that. And if you want your brighter colors to sing, sometimes they need to be next to, well, it's referred to as a neutral, but you might be calling it mud. But people buy those neutrals, and that's why it's important for you to learn your color wheel, or at least be aware of what you can take to neutralize something. Let's see, the more we change those values, take them down, soften them a little bit. Let me come back here and see. So how everything is ending here is a little bit too, everybody's in the same spot. So kind of make adjustments like that. The other thing that I like to do, or I recommend that you do, is walk away from your painting, give it a day, give it a new place to sit. I have paintings all over the house. It's part of my, I have a very patient person I live with. He doesn't mind that Deb has paintings everywhere. And what happens is you'll walk into a room and then you catch your painting and you're like, oh. And then all of a sudden something will just pop out and you're going, oh my gosh, what was I thinking right there? You can always go back and change it. But sometimes when you're right on top of it, like right now, and we're just doing this and kind of blown right through it, it's not going to be a work of perfection, but we can always tweak it. And I'm just going to step one back a little bit more. Yeah, I just need to soften some of these other areas, bring that color in, but you get the general idea of where we're going with this. And so I think we can wrap that up. And I'm just gonna add a little bit more. I could change the direction, add a swoosh. That's good enough for today. Let's just stop it right there. She says, let's stop it right there. And then she says, wait, I want to put one more color down there. You know, and I didn't actually even use my warm colors that much. I'm using pretty, right. I just added that warm red here to the blue that was in, and it was the warm blue. I'm just pulling that in here to quiet things here. Yeah, that's good enough. In fact, I would just, these lines, I'm just going to let those sit for now. If I take a look at this tomorrow and think, I might change something, but as you can see, I will just kind of keep fussing. So we're just going to call it. And I would take one of these liner, the real long, and these oops, I want to pick that up, take it with me. All right, I'm not quite thick enough. I'm going to come with a, sometimes I will use a watercolor pencil or just a regular pencil as I get started for the signature. But the liner pen will give you the ability to make these little lines, and they're great for branches. Now at this point, with these little lines that I'm putting on right now, I don't necessarily want to leave them as sharp as they look right now, because some of them are dark. And I didn't even mention to you that watercolor does dry lighter, but the way I work it, I'm working in layers anyway, so I'm not that concerned with that. I can always come in darker than I need to. But I just spritzed a little bit more water up there, and that's going to continue to soften some of these areas and let them play a little bit more. So at this point, I'm just kind of adjusting shapes that I see that pop out, and you think, oh, need to quiet that or change that. So anyway, I hope you learned something. Hope you learned how to scrub your color back off, how to control your water. I don't know. Maybe next time. Thanks for being here. Bye.